Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to the Las Vegas Grand Prix of 2025, the third to final race of the season, the 22nd, I believe, race of 2025. And this is what it's come down to. This is the beginning, obviously, of triple header, and in these next couple of weeks, we will officially find out who will be the Drivers' World Champion of 2025. After the last Grand Prix, it's looking pretty likely as to who that person is going to be. But of course, it is not totally decided. We've seen big turnarounds before in the final 2 or 3 races of a Formula One season. Think back to 2007 as an example of that. But most likely, it looks like Lando Norris is going to take his first world championship. But he cannot win the championship this weekend. It is not possible. So this weekend for him is all about setting up the chance to win it next weekend in Qatar. And then if he can't do it there, obviously make sure to do it in Abu Dhabi. This Grand Prix, though, is not easy for not only the team McLaren, but for the drivers as well. We've seen Lando Norris crash out of this Grand Prix a couple years ago. It's a challenging racetrack, especially with the cold temperatures. It's not easy. And the McLaren car is not that, I would say, well suited to this type of circuit. So it's not an easy weekend for Lando Norris to, say, further secure his maiden world championship. But that is really what the focus is this weekend, is can Lando Norris do a big enough job this weekend to where he essentially guarantees that he will be the world champion. He comes into this weekend 24 points clear of nearest rival and teammate Oscar Piastri. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen is 49 points behind in third. Very likely that Max Verstappen will be out of the championship picture after this weekend's race. Not impossible, of course. Red Bull will be decently quick this weekend, but it really is all Lando Norris's to lose the championship. I would be amazed if he doesn't win the championship from here. I know, again, we've had big turnarounds in the past, in the last 2 or 3 races of a season, but I just don't see, with the form he's in, and with how good that McLaren car is, and my God, is it a good car, I just don't see how he can be stopped at this point. So, yeah, for the weekend, that is the main focus. Can he, again, further secure what is surely his, the World Championship? But in terms of this stream, what we are mainly concentrating on is qualifying for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Qualifying is not the most important around this circuit compared to other tracks on the calendar because it is so easy to overtake down the very long back straight and also down the pit straight as well. You can make up a lot of positions here in Vegas, even if you have a bad qualifying. Lewis Hamilton is a great example of that from last year. Qualified 10th, finished second, and wasn't that far away from winning the race. So, qualifying is not absolutely critical here in Vegas, but it's still important. If you get it massively wrong, it absolutely can cost you the chance to win the race and potentially finish on the podium, especially if your car is not miles quicker than the rest of the field. So it is still a very important session, and we are going to go through this evening what's happened so far this weekend, the data from the weekend so far, and just look at where the teams are at. I'll give, obviously, my predictions for qualifying. We'll go through some key stats for the session as well. Essentially, what this stream is going to be is what I usually do in the build-up to a qualifying session when we do a qualifying watch-along. The reason I'm not doing a qualifying watch along this weekend is because the sessions for qualifying and the race are at really bad times for me. Qualifying in a few hours starts at 4 a.m. UK time, and then the race also starts at 4 a.m. So I will only this weekend be doing a race watch along, which is why you're getting this qualifying preview now. And also for you guys, this is a bit of a better time, especially for my European viewers. So yeah, that's why I'm doing this qualifying preview. And like I said, we're pretty much going to do what we usually do in a build-up to a qualifying session in this stream. Shouldn't be the longest stream. I'm aiming to keep it around 45 minutes to maybe an hour at the absolute most. But yeah, what we're going to do is go through what's happened so far this weekend, look at the data, I'll get into my own predictions, we'll get into some key stats, obviously the championship standings we'll look at as well. And then I want to hear from you guys in the chat. By the way, hope you're all doing well after the last couple weeks that we've been without Formula One. And no matter what time zone you're in, part of the world you're from, hope you're all having as best a time as possible. And yeah, I want to hear from you guys tonight as to what do you think will happen in qualifying? What are your predictions? Who do you think is likely to be on pole? And as well, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat, as usual, asking who do you think will take pole position for the Las Vegas Grand Prix? And the options are Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, and Max Verstappen. Out of those four, who do you think takes pole position? If you think it's someone, the person you think is going to take pole, if you think it's going to be someone different, like Antonelli or Russell, or even Lewis Hamilton, then post it in the chat. But yeah, I want to hear from you guys, especially as to what you think will happen in this session. A reminder, the session itself, starts in, I think, 9 hours from now. So if you guys do decide to stay up and watch the session, good luck, especially if you're in Europe. I hope you have I hope the session is good enough to keep you awake. But I personally will not be watching qualifying live. I think I'm going to watch it recorded probably a few hours after it happens. So I'll probably watch it, middle of tomorrow morning or something like that. But yeah, I think we will just get straight into it. And I was going to hide the countdown then, and I remembered there isn't a countdown. I'm so used to it. Let me get into the results of practice. A practice 2 session, by the way, which was a bit of a farce. Red flags came out twice because of a loose manhole cover, which, we've had this issue before. Well done to the organisers of the Las Vegas Grand Prix for, once again, risking the lives of drivers. I'm sure no one will, suffer a serious fate in the future, given the amount of times this is happening. It's just an absolute joke, isn't it? But we did get a practice session, and I think we got enough running to determine a bit of a running order, or pecking order, for what the pace should be in qualifying. Now, Lando Norris was quickest for McLaren, but he was only just ahead of Antonelli in the Mercedes, and Leclerc in the Ferrari was only a tenth and a half back. We know Mercedes and Ferrari tend to be a bit quicker on a Saturday than they were, in practice on a Friday, which, well, technically practice, it was on a Thursday yesterday. So, McLaren, even though they've topped the session, I wouldn't read a massive amount into that if you're a McLaren fan. I would be surprised if McLaren do genuinely have the fastest car in qualifying trim, because I don't think they have enough with their car of what you need to have the fastest car for qualifying. The two things, or let's say 3 things, you really do need to be the fastest around this circuit is really good front end. We know that McLaren has a really good front end, so they're going to be up there. but also you need really efficient, good straight line speed. McLaren doesn't have that. They are one of the weakest teams in that area. But also, you need to be good at firing the tyres up, really quickly for a qualifying lap. And I'm not sure McLaren are that great at that. Obviously, it does benefit them in the race, not overheating tyres, but I think teams maybe like a Ferrari who maybe do that a bit more than others, I think that's going to benefit them more than McLaren. So looking close, definitely, between the top three teams there, but I would be surprised if McLaren were the fastest team in qualifying. But it will be only maybe a couple tenths of a second at most, I think, separating those three teams, and Red Bull as well, who will be in there to a degree. Max Verstappen, as you can see, down in ninth, not having a great practice too, but I'm sure Red Bull will be a bit closer and quicker in qualifying. But I will say, I don't think Red Bull have enough pace to get pole position. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't think it's likely. I think it's more likely that if Max is going to have his best result the weekend, it's probably going to come in the race rather than qualifying. So, with the front-running teams, again, looking close, exciting, pretty much how it looked in Brazil a bit. And then, not that far behind, the midfield teams, Sauber and Racing Bulls. Nico Hulkenberg up in fourth, and then the two Racing Bulls so close on lap time in fifth and sixth place. And then you've got Alex Albon in the top 10 as well. A bit surprised that Williams weren't a bit quicker in practice. I thought they would have been right there, really, with where Racing Bulls and Sauber were. For them to be a couple tenths of a second almost away from those two teams over a single lap is a bit surprising, I must say. But maybe there's more to come there for Williams. Do watch out for Carlos Sainz. Carlos, he had a pretty good Las Vegas Grand Prix here last year, so maybe there is more potential in that car. But in terms of the midfield, yeah, Racing Bulls and Sauber look to be the two fastest teams currently from that midfield pack. Williams also in there, but probably not quite on the same level pace-wise as those teams, but still looking to be a competitive midfield. And then the rest of the field, Lance Stroll in 11th, indicates that there is more pace than Aston Martin. Obviously, Alonso normally is quicker than Stroll, so more to come from Aston Martin, but will it be a top 10 result? I'm not so sure. Gasly in 12th. Do keep an eye out for Pierre Gasly as well. He was third, remember, in qualifying at this Grand Prix last year in an Alpine car that was better than this one, but still had its issues. So keep an eye out for Pierre Gasly. He could really spring a surprise, especially after having such a great Sao Paulo Grand Prix. And then the biggest headline, really, of this bottom half of the order is Oscar Piastri. 14th place, almost 9/10 of a second slower than his teammate. I know he's lacking confidence, and he's pretty much... It almost feels like he's... I don't want to use the word surrendered the championship fight, because that feels a bit disrespectful, but he's partially waving the white flag in this battle. It just doesn't feel like he believes anymore that he can actually win the championship. I think he's just waiting, really, until the season ends. He's just desperate for it to end, because I think he knows at this point that it's over unless a miracle happens and something horribly goes wrong for Lando, whether it's a horrible mistake, horrible luck, then yeah, Piastri is not going to win the championship. So that's what it feels like with Oscar. He will be a lot closer on lap time to Lando no doubt in qualifying, and I still am very confident he'll make the top 10, but I don't really have any confidence in him being in the top 3. And even the top 5 is, I think, a bit of a, it's not going to be easy whatsoever for him to even get that. So yeah, Piastri in trouble. Yuki Tsunoda 15th, and then Colapinto, Behrman, Alonso, Ocon, and Bortoletto. Now, Haas, we saw in Brazil, in practice, they weren't very quick, and then suddenly they showed the pace that they showed in Mexico, and then had really good pace in that Sao Paulo Grand Prix qualifying and the race as well. I would be very surprised if they suddenly just turned the pace on like a tap in qualifying, because it doesn't seem to me like they are just that's what's I guess what they're waiting for. They are significantly off the pace of the teams, not just the front running teams, but even the midfield teams. They look to be nearly a second a lap off the pace of even those teams. And I don't think they're just, like I said, going to suddenly just turn on the taps and be, getting both cars in the top 10 or Behrman being in the top 5. I would love it if it was like that. And Behrman, like he did in Brazil, just, got back to the really stunning pace and was right on it. But I don't think that's going to happen in qualifying. I think they will be better than what they've been in practice, no doubt. But yeah, I don't see them in the third and final part of qualifying. Put it that way. They just don't have anywhere near, I think, as good of a feeling with that car as they've had in the last couple Grand Prix. Even Behrman, after practice, said that the track isn't very enjoyable to drive, which, I mean, he's right. It's not the greatest track in the world. It's probably one of the worst street circuits in terms of the corners are just not very interesting at this track. And I think he said it's the worst street track he's ever driven. I'm sure it feels even worse in a car that clearly is off the pace. So, yeah. Haas, unfortunately, don't seem to have that similar pace this weekend. But maybe they will just, out of nowhere, turn on the tap, like I said, and be suddenly fighting for like a top 5 or top 6 on the grid like they were in Brazil. I really hope that's the case, but like I said, I just don't see it. But those are the results from practice 2, which is by far the most representative session we've had so far. Let's get into the sector time data, just to understand why it ended up the way it did. Now, the first sector is pretty simple. You come off the banking, very high speed, into turn 1, which is kind of like a semi-hairpin type corner. Then you go into a nice flowing right-hander, then a short DRS zone, and then that's your first sector. It's a very simple first sector. And Mercedes and Ferrari basically on the same pace. McLaren not too far off. That's probably because of that slight lack of straight line speed they have in comparison. And then you got Williams, Red Bull, not great in that first sector. Aston Martin, Racing Bulls, Alpine. Oh no, Haas, Sauber, and Alpine, the slowest team. Alpine, though, a lot quicker in the other parts of the lap. But the first sector, as long as you don't make a mistake, the first sector is not important at all. It's the middle and the final sector that really matters for qualifying. The middle sector, you have a lot of slow corners where you do need a very good front end to really get into the corners and attack the corners. And the McLaren, which has the best front end of any car on the grid, no surprise, the fastest team through that part of the lap. Then you got Ferrari and Mercedes, not too far behind. And then Racing Bulls, Sauber, Williams, 3/10 off. Williams normally do have a good front end themselves, but I'm surprised they're that far off in the middle sector. So I think there's the potential for them to be a tenth and a half quicker in this part of the lap. And they got Alpine, bit better. Aston Martin, bit of a drop-off. And then Red Bull, 0.4 of a second off the pace of McLaren just in this part of the lap. Now, Red Bull, I'm pretty confident, and they've been doing this for years. I'm pretty confident of it. Tend to run, I think, a bit more fuel than others in practice. This is the part of the lap where that would really show up. And I think, without doubt, in qualifying, they will be closer in this part of the lap by at least a couple tenths of a second, maybe even 3/10 of a second. So that's why I say there is definitely more pace in that Red Bull, because there's no way they're going to have the second slowest car in the middle sector tomorrow. There's just no way. I know they were slowest factually in qualifying in Brazil, but I think that's just a very small blip. I don't think we're going to see that again. And then Haas, over half a second off the pace in just the middle sector, which is only half a minute long. So yeah, clearly big issues with that car in terms of its compatibility to the circuit. And then the final sector is just flat out, basically. You are absolutely revving the engine to bits. You are going at incredible speeds at the very end of that back straight. Then you get into a chicane, which is, for overtaking, it's pretty exciting. As long as through that chicane you just make sure you stay online and you get a good exit, that's all that matters. And then you are once again flat out to the finish line. So the straight line speed really matters in this final part of the lap. And no surprise, two Ferrari-powered teams are at the top of the timesheets in the final sector. Sauber, though, are the quickest in the final sector, just ahead of Ferrari. Mercedes, about 10th off the pace. Racing Bulls, pretty good pace from them in the final sector, so clearly they've got their wing levels right to be consistently quick through the whole lap. And then, yeah, McLaren, fifth fastest, no real surprise there. They have, again, one of the slowest cars in a straight line, so that's just not a surprise whatsoever. Williams, just behind McLaren, and then you've got Alpine. Red Bull, again, I think they'll be probably at least a tenth and a half quicker than that in qualifying. And then Aston Martin and Haas rounding out the field. In terms of McLaren versus Mercedes and Ferrari, versus Mercedes, I think Mercedes overall have got a faster car through the lap. In the first and the final sector, Mercedes looked to be quicker than McLaren. And then if you compare Ferrari versus McLaren, pretty much the same. In the first and the final sector, Ferrari looked to be faster. It's just that middle sector where McLaren is so strong. That will help them quite a bit in the race. But for qualifying, that's where McLaren are losing out. And that's why I would say, going into qualifying, I think McLaren have got, at best, the third fastest car. Which, yeah, is quite a bit different to where they were in practice, where they were top of the timesheets. But credit to Lando Norris, he delivered the best lap he could when others didn't do quite their best laps in practice too. They didn't quite nail all the sectors together like Lando did. So if we go back to the results of practice 2, like I said, I think McLaren are the third fastest team. The fastest team, I would probably have to go with Mercedes, because I just think consistently in all of the sectors, I think they've just got a bit more downforce, a bit more grip than the Ferrari does, especially in the first couple sectors where there's, more corners. In the final sector, Ferrari are going to be very strong through there. But through the corners, I think that's what decides it in Mercedes' favour. So I would say Mercedes, the fastest team. Ferrari second. McLaren third. Red Bull fourth. Fifth, I would probably go... Honestly, I'd probably go Sauber fifth, even though I don't think they'll end up being the quickest midfield team in the session itself. I think, potential-wise, I think they've got the fastest midfield car. Only just ahead of Racing Bulls, and then after that, Williams, Aston Martin, and then I'd go, Alpine, just ahead of Haas. That's what I think the pecking order is for qualifying. Of course, it could be a lot different, but that's what I think it is. And I really hope it is, because I think it would make the race, especially from a championship perspective, a lot more interesting if McLaren don't have the fastest car this weekend like they've had for the last couple of races. And same, with Red Bull, who, so far this weekend have not looked too great. So, given that's my view of what the pecking order is, let me get into my predictions for this session. And taking his first ever pole position in Formula One, it will be Kimi Antonelli. I believe he will do it in a few hours from now and take pole for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. The car is there. It's all about whether he can deliver. If he can drive as well as he did in Brazil, I don't see why he won't be on pole position. The car is absolutely there to deliver that result. In second, Charles Leclerc, a driver who very much will be motivated this weekend to get Ferrari's first and what will be only win of 2025. But also remember, Leclerc robbed of the victory here 2 years ago, which he somehow didn't get after being clearly the best driver that weekend. Lando Norris, I think, will qualify third, just ahead of Max Verstappen and George Russell. And then Lewis Hamilton, I'm going in sixth. Piastri seventh, just ahead of the two Racing Bulls of Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson. And then Nico Hülkenberg, I think, will just sneak in the top 10. The reason I've gone for the two Racing Bulls ahead of the Sauber of Hülkenberg is because Hülkenberg this season has not consistently been that great in qualifying, when Racing Bulls as a team, and Isaac Hadjar as well, have been in qualifying, quite good. It's been a very much a strong point for them this season. So that's why I've gone Racing Bulls ahead, even though I think Sauber, again, in terms of potential, I think Sauber have got the faster car and maybe will have for the race. But that's my prediction. And if this grid was to manifest itself, the top 10 for the race, I think we'd get a pretty good race as well, with especially the top 7 being so mixed up. Mercedes on pole, the other Mercedes in 5th, Ferrari 2nd, the other one is 6th, McLaren in 3rd, the other one is 7th, and then Max right in the middle. Yeah, that would be an ideal grid for this race. And that's what I think we'll end up with. Fingers crossed we do. Couple other things, though, that I want to go through before we go any further into, comments from you guys in the chat or anything, is firstly, let's just have a look at the championship standings, because again, this weekend is so important for the championship. And Lando Norris, like I said, 24 points clear of Oscar Piastri. All he needs to do is make sure that he is, I think, at least 26 or 27 points clear of Piastri at the conclusion of the Qatar Grand Prix, which is next weekend, and he will be world champion. And currently 24 points clear, so all he has to do is outscore him by 3 points, pretty much, or more, and it's, over. If Lando does qualify in 3rd and Piastri is 7th, then I don't see how Lando doesn't end up being at least 30 points clear in the championship at the end of this Las Vegas Grand Prix. Verstappen in 3rd, 49 points behind. Max has to win this race, simple as. Unless Lando has a DNF, Max has got to win this race without a shadow of doubt. If he does, and Lando does finish only 3rd or finishes outside of the podium positions, then maybe Verstappen can drag the championship battle until the final race. That is certainly, I think, what a lot of us are hoping, because we want it to go down to the final Grand Prix. But realistically, looking at where Red Bull are at with their car this weekend, I'd be amazed if he won this race. But then again, it's Max Verstappen. He could very well do it. We've seen him pull off race wins this season that we thought were nowhere near possible. So we will ultimately find out. But realistically, the championship should be really over for Verstappen. And then after that, you got George Russell in fourth, and then Leclerc, Hamilton, Antonelli catching Lewis Hamilton. Antonelli, if he could win this Grand Prix this weekend, Antonelli could very well be right on the heels of Lewis Hamilton for that sixth place of the championship. Alex Albon then in eighth, Hulkenberg in ninth, and Hadjar 10th, both level on points. Just outside the top 10, though, we have Behrman and Alonso on 40 points, so we could maybe see another change in the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship at the conclusion of this Grand Prix. Ultimately, we will find out, but it is going to be interesting, especially that midfield, to see how it shakes out, see how close they are as well to the front-running teams, because in Brazil, they weren't that far off. Oliver Behrman was only 25 seconds away from the race winner in the Haas in sixth place. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they all shake out. On the constructors' end, we have some very interesting battles to look at. So McLaren, obviously the champions. Mercedes, I don't see them being caught at this point with 3 races to go. They're 32 points clear of Red Bull, the next team below them. Unless Mercedes have like a double DNF in the final 3 races. Yeah, Mercedes, I'm pretty confident, will secure second in the championship. And then, yeah, Red Bull, now up to third, only 4 points clear of Ferrari. Can Ferrari avoid finishing fourth in the championship? That would be their worst championship finishing position since, I think, 2020. I believe. Let me just quickly confirm that a second. I'm just quickly looking at the 2021 season to see exactly where they finished. And yeah, Ferrari were third that season. So if Ferrari finish fourth, it will be their worst result in the Constructors' Championship since 2020, where they finished in sixth. Obviously, that was an absolute shit show of a season. Can Ferrari avoid that fate? Can they finish in the top 3 of the championship yet again for what would be the, 5th season in a row? I think it would be, for them finishing in the top 5 of the championship. We will see. I mean, quite frankly, they deserve to finish fourth in the championship, because what they've produced this year has been absolutely terrible. But we'll see. I think they could get away with finishing in third because, again, Red Bull have only got one car in play for them, which is obviously Max Verstappen. So we'll see how that shakes out. Williams in fifth. Unless Racing Bulls have another big points haul in these final 3 races, I still think Williams are going to finish fifth in the championship. They are 29 points clear of Racing Bulls, which it sounds comfortable, but it can very easily be swung around. Again, remember, Alpine just over a year ago finished second and third in Brazil, 33 points, and that took them from almost last in the championship up to 6th. So, if Racing Bulls have a similar Grand Prix, they could be right there and fighting Williams for a top 5 finishing position. Yet again, Racing Bulls, of course, still searching for that elusive top 5 championship finish, which they've been searching for 6 or 7 years at this point. Aston Martin 7th, 10 points behind Racing Bulls. At this point, I think Aston Martin will not catch Racing Bulls. Racing Bulls, for me, have a faster car. I just don't see, especially with Lance Stroll regularly not scoring any points for Aston Martin, I just don't see Aston Martin having a fast enough car to, uh, not make allowances for that, but, to combat that issue hurting them. So, Racing Bulls should finish at least in 6th. Haas, though, I think will finish 7th in the championship with how quick their car is at the moment. Even though this weekend, it's not that quick, I think they'll be back to business probably in the final couple races. And if Behrman can keep his form up, there's no reason why he can't score a few more points and drag Haas into 7th in the championship, which would be a decent championship finish for them if they finish in 7th. I know they still desperately want to finish in the top 6, which would be a pretty good season for them if they got that. But 7th place would still be decent enough. And then, Aston Martin, I'm expecting to drop to 8th. Sauber, I'm still expecting them to stay in 9th unless they have a big result from somewhere. They will probably still score a few points between now and the end of the season, but will it be enough to overtake anyone ahead of them? Probably not. And then, Alpine last in the championship on 22 points. They are going to remain there. But before I come to your comments in the chat, just want to quickly go on to one final thing, which is some key stats regarding the front-running teams for this qualifying session coming up in a few hours in Las Vegas. McLaren, remember, have never taken pole position at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. In the last 7 races, though, they have taken 3 pole positions. 2 of them have been the last 2 races with Lando Norris. So, as of recent, their qualifying form is very good. So, if they're right in that fight, maybe they'll get another pole position to add to the multiple poles they've had this year. Last year, though, in qualifying, McLaren were absolutely terrible. 6th and 8th. They were by far the 4th fastest team. They were nowhere near finishing on the podium last year. That will be different this year, but McLaren, I'm sure, can do a bit better this time around. For Red Bull, they've also never took pole at the Las Vegas Grand Prix and have also taken 3 poles in the last 7 races. Their last pole position was in Austin with Max Verstappen, and also they took pole in Monza and Baku. Remember as well, we've had 2 other American races this year, and Max Verstappen took pole position in those 2 races, in Miami and Austin. So, can they keep up that record for this year? We will see. Last year, though, it was 5th and 16th in qualifying. Red Bull were not very quick at all in this race last year, even though Max Verstappen won his 4th World Championship a year ago here in Vegas. Thankfully for him, McLaren weren't any quicker. For the Ferrari team, of course, they've already had heartbreak at this Grand Prix. Their last pole in Las Vegas was 2 years ago with Charles Leclerc, who was on pole by a country mile that particular session. But somehow, like I said earlier, he did not win that race. I still don't know how he did not get that win. It was so deserved. But in the end, he finished 2nd, completing a brilliant last lap overtake on Sergio Perez, which, I will remember fondly from Leclerc, because that was one of the best, I think, watch-along moments we've had here on the channel as of recent history, that last lap overtake. And last year, 2nd and 4th on the grid it was for the Ferrari team. Ferrari were clearly the 2nd fastest team in last year's Grand Prix here. Will that continue? We will see. And the best team at this Grand Prix last year was clearly, by far, the Mercedes team. They took pole position last year with George Russell. And if it wasn't for Lewis Hamilton messing up what happened, messing up in Q3, Mercedes would have locked out the front row probably, and Lewis Hamilton could have took his third win of that season because he was very good in the race and very, very quick all weekend. Mercedes, their last pole position was 4 races ago. Mercedes last year, like I said, it was first and 10th in qualifying, but really should have been a front row lockout. Obviously, did end up still being a 1-2 finish, which again, it is a bit easier to overtake here than it is at other circuits, but it does show you that even if you don't have a good qualifying, if you've got a fast enough car, you can make your way back through because there are plenty of overtaking opportunities. So qualifying, not the absolute be-all and end-all here in Vegas. But overall, guys, that's my preview for qualifying for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. That's what I think is going to happen, and we'll see whether it does happen. Before I go, I am going to read out a few comments from the chat, and I will obviously finish up the results in the poll results to see who you guys have voted for. Hello to Efron, who is in the chat and who has posted some comments. Serigara saying George Russell or George of the Russell, watch out for that win. Crystal saying if Lando fails to win the championship, it's an embarrassment for him. If he fails to win this championship, he will be the biggest bottle job of all time, without doubt. He will never live this down, Lando, if he doesn't win this championship. He will never live it down. He will, sorry. Just trying to burp there. Mentally, he will be crushed if he does not win the championship. Let's see what other comments we've got here. Crystal saying, but on F1 matters, I might be fast asleep for qualifying in the race. If you are, then yeah, no problem. You do whatever you want. I mean, if it's a close competitive qualifying, we've got a mixed up grid like I think we will have for the race, then probably a bit more likely that you'll want to be up for the race. But if we get one team locking out the front row, then yeah, it might not be the most unmissable of races, if that makes any sense. And Crystal also saying, if F1 wanted to make it big in America, it should be a 4 p.m. start local time in Vegas. That would be 9 p.m. start for Brazil and 12 a.m. for the UK. That is one thing I don't get, is why so late. I know they want it to be a night race, but nighttime begins a few hours earlier. They could start this race at, like you said, 4 or 5 p.m. and it would be, it'd be a much better time. But yeah, it's I don't know if it's because of maybe the last Grand Prix here in Vegas I covered a couple years ago. Maybe it was because it was I don't know if it was before the what do you call it? Was it before the clocks changing? I can't remember. Or it was after, most likely. But the race for the Las Vegas Grand Prix a couple years ago started at like 6 a.m. here in the UK. And I think that was because it was a 10 p.m. race start. I don't know why they've gone away from that, but they have. And what do you call it? When it comes to my race watch along, just to inform you guys, I might not be in the best of conditions for my race watch along, which will be tomorrow evening / middle of the night, if that makes any sense. And the reason that is because tomorrow I'm planning to go out and do what I usually do on a Saturday. And no, that's not get absolutely hammered, but I'm going to, go to a couple things, couple events, hopefully enjoy myself. And then once I get home in the evening, I'm going to stay up until my stream starts and then do the stream and cover the race and all of that. So I might be a bit knackered. Let's just put it that way. And I might sound a bit tired. So just a pre-warning that if I don't, if my voice doesn't sound at its best, that's probably why, because I'm, probably will be running on, not necessarily a lack of sleep, but I would have been awake at that point for probably 17 or 18 hours straight. So yeah, I'm not quite looking forward to that part of tomorrow's stream, but just a reminder, I will be live at 2 a.m. UK time on Sunday morning, technically, for the 4 a.m. UK time race start for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I will also be joined by Niblo, my co-commentator, who will be back on for the first time since, I think, the Singapore Grand Prix. Oh no, not Singapore, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix was the last time he was on. That was 2.5 months ago, I think, or was it 2.5 months ago? No, it was 2 months ago. So yeah, he will be back on. Obviously, he has the delight of having the race start for him at 4, 5 p.m. in the afternoon. So yeah, that'll be great, obviously, for him. And obviously, you guys, if there's anyone watching this video who, views the Formula One season from Asia or Australia, then obviously you deserve to have, this type of Grand Prix where you guys can watch at a normal time, when of course mostly for us European lot it's at normal or good times. But yeah, that's the plan for the race. And then remember, if you can't join us for the race because sleep is too inviting and you just don't feel like getting up for the race, which I can completely understand, don't worry, because I will be doing a podcast episode on Monday where I will review the Las Vegas Grand Prix and whatever happens in it. So if you can't join us for the race watch along, then you can still join us for the podcast on Monday, and that'll be uploaded on Monday evening as usual after the Grand Prix. So that's the plan for this weekend. And of course, next weekend I'll be doing both a qualifying and race watch along for the Qatar Grand Prix, which I'm fully expecting at this point to be the Grand Prix where the championship is decided. And then, of course, there'll be a podcast on the Monday reviewing that race. And then regarding the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi, my content plans for that Grand Prix depend purely on whether the championship is won in Qatar or not. If there is one in Qatar, then I'm only going to do a race watch along for that final race. If the championship does, though, go down to the final race, of course, I will do both a qualifying and race watch along for that Grand Prix. So that's the plan going forward for these next couple weeks. Anyway, cheers for you guys coming along and tuning in for this qualifying preview. Let me just finish up the poll in the chat where I've asked you guys, who do you think will take pole position for the Las Vegas Grand Prix? 40 votes, and 48% of those votes have gone to Lando Norris. 28% for Verstappen, 19% for Leclerc, and 5% for Oscar Piastri. Thank you guys for coming along for this qualifying preview. Sorry that, it's not been too long of a stream, but wanted to keep this a bit shorter so that people watching back after the stream don't have to watch for hours to hear what I have to say. And I hope what I've gone through will give you a good preview of what to hopefully expect going into qualifying. Again, if you watch the qualifying session live, hopefully you have a good time. I will be watching it recorded a few hours after, probably tomorrow morning here in the UK. and we'll see what goes down in Sin City. But like I said, make sure to join us for that race watch along on Sunday morning at 2 a.m. UK time for a 4 a.m. UK time start of the race. And we'll see who wins in Vegas. Obviously, the first Grand Prix was Verstappen. Last year it was Russell. Will we get a repeat winner? Or will we get another new winner of the Las Vegas Grand Prix? We will find out. Make sure to join us for that stream, guys. Before you go, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And as well, smash that like button. It does help the channel and the algorithm and helps show me that you guys enjoy the content. But guys, thank you for coming along for this qualifying preview. And until my race watch along early on Sunday morning for this Las Vegas Grand Prix that will still be very crucial in deciding who is going to win the Drivers' World Championship of 2025. Until 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, guys, it has been me, Kazza HD. Goodbye.